So we're going to go through, give picks for every single game in the Sweet 16. It begins on Thursday. I think the Friday slate's a little stronger than the Thursday slate, but we're going to go region by region. So again, guys, if you're enjoying the content, make sure you like it, and let's get into this. We will start in the East region. We have Duke, the number 1 seed in the tournament, going up against St. John's. Duke is a 6.5-point favorite. I think right now we're starting to get to that point where like the legacy of Duke, the brand name of Duke, is getting a little more points than they should because they're laying 6.5. And I don't know if they're worthy of being a 6.5-point favorite in the spot the way they have played in the tournament. So Grant, take me through this game.
Yeah, I mean, really, we finally saw the real Duke in the second half against TCU because we know what happened against Siena. They were the first 1 seed in March Madness history to have a double-digit deficit against a 16 seed. So they come back, but even in the comeback, they don't look like they're playing very well. First half against TCU, a TCU team that I don't want to say was lucky to be there, but it was all the way down to the end against Ohio State. So there's a world in which they don't even make it into that round. And it's 34-38 at halftime. You're like, wow, if you pick Duke, your bracket's basically over. You might as well rip it up. And then they come out and they win the second half 43-24. So that's what we've been waiting to see from Duke. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to give them credit for doing it because that's what they should have been doing. They should have been coasting at least until the Sweet 16 when they do run up against the St. John's team. And now it's going to be a tough matchup for them. With that being said, the way that St. John's ended against Kansas, I mean, they go up, it looks pretty convincing, and then Kansas comes roaring back all of a sudden, and Kansas really should have, that game should have gone to overtime. The way that finished, where Bill Self and his team, they're fouling St. John's up and down the entire court, they get to the point where it's 3 seconds left, final possession, and there's just nobody at home in the lane. All the St. John's ball handler had to do was get 1 step, and it was basically like a game of one-on-one with how much space they had cleared out on the floor. And he got the step and he makes the shot. All the credit in the world to him, but just bad coaching by Kansas and bad execution by their defense. But with me saying all this, like St. John's in this game against Kansas, their offense still did not play well at all. They shot 36% from the field, 31% from 3, and 55% from the free throw line. We can talk about Duke being disappointing all we want to, but if St. John's comes out and executes like that on offense, they're going to go home very quickly because no matter how bad Duke plays, they can shoot 36% from the field. And if that's all it takes, they're going to win that game.
Yeah, I think Duke's physicality matches up pretty well with St. John's. St. John's can make shots, don't get me wrong, but when they get into trouble, they get in those spurts where they're not making shots, and then the physicality doesn't really play to the strength of their team, honestly. So it's an interesting game here. I think when I look at Duke, the way they turned it on in the second half, I would think they'd be okay here, but you just don't know what you're going to get because if you give St. John's life, you're in trouble. If St. John's dictating the pace of the game, Zuby Ejiofor is, working down inside. The physicality's working. Duke could have not a long day here. I do think they're going to be able to stay in the game. But if St. John's is setting the pace early in this one, I think Duke will be in trouble in the second half. So Duke has to come out and really put away St. John's and force them into those spurts where they're not scoring a lot. And that's the way they get it done here.
Yep, I agree. And then on the flip side of that, St. John's wants to make this a defensive game. Duke plays at a slow tempo. So they want to play in that half court. And they're just going to have to execute. St. John's is going to make it really tough. I agree that Duke can match up physically, but that doesn't mean that St. John's won't also bring the fight to them on the other side. So if you are Duke, you do have, with all due respect to the better players, I think your offensive system, you're better coached on the offensive end in terms of the things that you can do, the looks you can get to. And that goes hand in hand with the talent that you have, but you have to be able to execute. If you can't, then the pendulum swings back to St. John's.
Duke is 7th in offensive rating, 1st in defensive rating. St. John's 42nd in offensive rating and 8th in defensive rating. I would lean towards Duke if they can score. But if Duke's not scoring, like to a point where they have the advantage over St. John's, I know that sounds pretty self-explanatory, but if they don't use their offensive advantage here, if you're not getting Cameron Boozer going and Caden Boozer, who's been really good in the tournament so far, you're in trouble. So if I'm looking at a spread here, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to take the Johnnies plus 6.5. And I think Pitino continues to move on. I'm not saying they're going to upset. We're going to talk about upset picks a little later, but I will take the 6.5 points with the Johnnies.
What's interesting too is we're transitioning from weekend 1 to weekend 2. So any sort of underdog teams or teams that were like uncharacteristically hot, that streak ends and you kind of reset and you go into the next weekend. St. John's wasn't hot. Duke wasn't hot. So this reset might be for the best for both of them. I'm with you. I think it's a close game. I'll give it to St. John's at +6.5. If I'm picking who moves on, I'm taking Duke.
And right now, when you look at the region odds, Duke's -125. Then you got Michigan State around +330, depending on the book, which is interesting because they're an underdog to UConn. And then you have UConn and St. John's both like in that +450 range, again, depending on the book. If you're looking for promo codes and betting bonuses and all that good stuff, make sure you guys check out WSN.com. We got a ton of stuff on there for tons of sports books. But all right, Grant, so you're going to take Duke to move on. I'm going to take the Johnnies +6.5. I'm going to talk money line picks later. I don't know if I have the courage to take them to win the game outright, but I do think it's close. We move into our next game here. This one's going to be a fun one. We got Michigan State versus UConn. Connecticut -1.5 on the spread. UConn looked pretty good last night in the second half against Mick Cronin's UCLA team. UCLA didn't have their best player. For Michigan State, though, they looked good too, and they set the physicality in their game as well in the second round. So who do you like here?
Well, you know what's funny is this is a matchup between two teams that are about as even as they can possibly be. I'm looking at KenPom right now. Michigan State 9th, UConn 10th. In offensive rating, it's Michigan State at 22, UConn at 30. Defensive rating, it's Michigan State at 13, UConn at 11. Tempo, it's 243 to 322. And I get that's 100 spots difference, but that means they both played very slow. So if you were to just play this game on your calculator, they'd be almost inseparable because they look like two very similar teams. For UConn, I mean, it's the big men that have powered them through the first two games. Terrace Reed in the first game has, I think, 31 and 27, if I'm remembering that right, most rebounds at a tournament game since 1968. And then in the win over UCLA, it's Alex Caravan who shows up, 27 points, 5 rebounds, and Terrace Reed in that game had another double-double, 10 points, 13 rebounds. So it's been the interior guys that have powered them through this so far, and that's not normally how this thing goes in March Madness. Normally it's the guards that win you the games. But then on the other side for Michigan State, Cohen Carr has been probably their best player so far. You're still waiting for Jeremy Fears to really get it going. So I think the team that gets the most backcourt production in this game is actually going to be the one that steps up and probably makes it through to the next round. And if I'm looking at that, I would say that I have more confidence in Michigan State's players to do that. But at the same time, I say this every chance I get. I still trust Dan Hurley. I trust Dan Hurley against basically every coach in college basketball. And Tom Izzo has been making a reputation on things that he did 20, 25 years ago. So it's a very, very close matchup. Will admit that I'm surprised to see UConn favored, though. I thought they would have given it to Michigan State.
Yeah, I would have thought UConn would have been a 1.5 dog, maybe 2-point dog. But it really comes down to the shot making for UConn. Braylon Mullen started to make some shots last night in their second round game against UCLA. That was huge. But when I look at, UCLA or Michigan State as a whole in their game and how they played, they look good. They were setting the tempo. They were being very, very physical. And they really took a Louisville team that relied on 3-pointers and didn't give them that many good looks. And, the announcers are trying to make the case that Louisville had great looks throughout the entire game. They really did. Michigan State's defense was on a different level in that basketball game. The one fear I have, Michigan State was trying to get out in transition so much that they were turning the ball over way too much. Some of the passes were very, very poor. I think if I had to, look at how both teams' season has gone, I think I have more faith in UConn scoring. Like I have more faith in UConn not going on those dry spells like Michigan State goes on a lot. And Michigan State can recover because they're so good on defense. But there were moments in that Louisville game where if a few shots were made by the Cardinals, easier said than done, they would have been in the game and in the lead. I think UConn, between Alex Caravan, between Terrace Reed down low, Braylon Mullins, if he starts hitting shots, and like solo ball, you've gotten absolutely nothing from. So if solo ball can start making a few shots, I think UConn's in a slightly better position here. But this is such a tight game. Hard one to pick.
Yeah, it's that classic case of, okay, well, he's done nothing so far. So just imagine what he can do for you. But then it's like, well, what if he just continues to do nothing? And on the flip side, Jeremy Fears, 7 points in round 1, 12 on 23% shooting in round 2. Now, granted, he's averaging 14 assists in the tournament, which is nuts. 16 assists in a tournament game is ridiculous. but he also hasn't gotten going as a scorer. So again, I get back to who's going to win the battle of the backcourt. And with all due respect to Fears and the wild assist numbers that he is putting up, you have to score the ball as well. It's about who can get the bucket when you need to, not who can create the look, because you're probably creating the look for someone who isn't respected as much by the defense. That's why you're the primary focus. So I'm going to give it to Michigan State. I am going to give it to them, but I'll be honest, I'm not betting on this game. I don't feel confident about it. I think this one's going to be very tight.
I'll take UConn. I think UConn gets it done if they find a little more shot making, which they started to against UCLA. That's why they were able to embarrass them in the second half. So I'll go with the Huskies there. Moving down the bracket here to the South region, Grant, we have Iowa versus Nebraska. Iowa pulls off the upset of the century, knocking off Florida, which was the fakest 1 seed we've ever seen. And they did it in Tampa. So, that's pretty close to Gainesville. So, good win for Iowa. Going up against the Nebraska Corn Huskers, who had just won their first tournament game ever, right? It was ever.
Yeah, ever.
Yeah, they were like 0 for 8 before the first round. So Iowa beat them once, and then Nebraska beat them in overtime this season. So it's going to be a tight game. It's 2.5-point spread. Interesting matchup. Grant, who you feeling here?
So with Nebraska, we'll go one by one with the teams here. With Nebraska, they are a team that is streaky. They live and die by that. So I don't want to say that anything they've done in these first 2 games is uncharacteristic or not necessarily what I was expecting to see. With that being said, they go on this wild run in game 1 where they're up by 30 points. And then against Vanderbilt did win this second half. They had the chance to win it from half court right at the end of the game. Nebraska shot 47% from 3 in that game, 56% from the field. So I don't really know how much more efficient you can possibly be. Really, the answer is you can't be more efficient than that. At least you can't go into a game expecting to be, because you've outperformed your season averages quite dramatically in both regards. Now, on the flip side of this, Iowa may have, thrown away the lead that they built against Florida. But the fact that they did need to put together a run to go up by 12 or 14 points, whatever it was, and they did do it, and it was all good offensive execution while they were only shooting 29% from 3. If they get back to their season average, then they would have beaten Florida by more than 1 point. And they were getting some looks. They just weren't knocking them down. So ultimately, I have more confidence in Iowa. I would say, if we were to play this game 10 times, I would pick Iowa to win 6 of the 10. The problem is that's not how this goes. If Nebraska comes in and they're going to stay hot, they're going to be making their shots from 3, then it's going to be pretty close to impossible for Iowa to beat them. The question is, can Iowa shut the water off for them? Looking at the way they defended the 3 against Florida, I ultimately think that they can and they will. So I will take Iowa in a close one.
Iowa in a close one. Okay, so you look at the first game these 2 teams played. Nebraska shot 41% from the field. Iowa shot 33%. They were both 21, 26% from the 3-point line. And then you go down to the turnovers. They each had 12. The rebounds, Iowa dominated the glass on the offensive side and the defensive side. They had 12 offensive rebounds compared to Nebraska with 2. So that's how the first game went between the 2 teams. We go to the second game. It was a 84-75 overtime win for Nebraska, and the stats relatively different here. So Iowa shot 48%, Nebraska shot 50%. They each were 37% from the field, and the rebounding battle was much closer, 32-29. So it seems like whoever can win the rebounding battles, Nebraska can keep it close there. They're going to have a chance in this game. I don't necessarily think Iowa has the team to beat Houston and get to the Final Four, but I do think Iowa has a great chance of winning this game because it is a conference game. Same thing if we got UConn versus St. John's in the East region, right? UConn's got a better chance of winning that probably than against a Duke team because just the familiarity aspect of it. So I will agree with you, and I will take the Hawkeyes here.
All right, another upset, like it. A 9 seed into our Elite 8.
Yeah, 9, and then the Elite 8, that'll be where the road ends, and I think Houston will have a very easy time. Houston or Illinois, we don't know who we're picking yet, but assuming we pick Houston. Anyways, Grant, Houston, Illinois, Cougars 2.5-point favorites. This is in Houston. This is crazy that these games are taking place in Houston. But who do you like here?
So this, I think, is going to be a very good matchup. Illinois, we go to good old Ken Palm. Houston is 4th in Ken Palm's net rating. Illinois is 6th. Offensively, it's 10 for Houston, 2 for Illinois. Defensively, it's 4 for Houston, 24 for Illinois. I'll be honest, Houston, they're always going to be a very good defensive team under Kelvin Sampson, but this is probably the worst defensive team we've seen from them of the last 4 or 5 years or so, and they're still really good, but it's just at the bottom of that list. Illinois, I think they can generate offense on pretty much any team they play right now. I mean, they score 105 in the opener. It's against UPenn. Okay, cool. But then they bounce back and they beat VCU coming off of a momentous win by 21 points. And that game's, I guess you could say it's a 7-point game at halftime, but Illinois just kind of boat races them in the second half. And they're shooting 48% from the field, 38% from three, which are really efficient numbers. They've got a lot of guys who can do it. Keaton Wagler is an awesome freshman. So if Houston's going to win this game, I don't think it's going to be they control the tempo, the physicality, they suffocate, anything like that. I think it's actually got to be Houston's offense that wins the game for them. And we're not really used to saying that with this program.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Emmanuel Sharp. That's who it comes down to. You got the experience there, big game. Kingston Fleming's going to be great. We know that. But Emmanuel Sharp is a guy who has been here, done that. He's been at Houston for 4 years. You've had the heartbreaking loss in the national championship. Those two guys really got to do it, but I think he's got to lead the charge here. And if he does, Houston's the better team. And I'm not saying I wasn't impressed with what Illinois has done so far in the tournament. 105-70 against Penn, then you take care of business against VCU, who wasn't necessarily very good. This is going to be a tough matchup, but I think Houston has the better overall team. They're the more complete team. They've given up a little bit on the defensive side of the floor this year to improve on offense. And it's a better recipe because you need guards and you need shot making in the tournament. So I will take Houston to get it done here. I think this is a comfortable Houston win. It might be tight down the stretch, but I think Houston does pull away and find a way to win by close to 10 points.
I do have Houston as well. I think it'll be probably to what you said. I think they'll be holding like a 4 to 6 point lead, and Illinois just never closes that gap. But to what you were saying about shot making from your guards in the tournament, Kingston Fleming's, Uzan Sharp, they didn't shoot the ball well against Texas A&M, which is kind of wild because they won by 31 points. But combined, they were 5 of 19 from three. Those three guards who are going to be having the ball in their hands an awful lot. And they can do better than that. But the problem is they can also do that. They can go out and lay an egg. Like, they are streaky, inconsistent sort of shooters. I've talked about this on the channel before. I don't think Houston sets great screens, and there's not a lot of secondary playmaking for them. So sometimes they just settle for these terrible shots that are never going to go in. So they gotta be on their game against Illinois. I do think they will get it done, but they're prone to what we have seen from them in that A&M game, which again is weird because they won by 30 points.
So let's just say Illinois pulls off the upset here. Not really much of an upset. Let's say Iowa pulls off an upset. Both dogs win in the region. Then you would get Iowa versus Illinois, and we got that matchup once this season, I believe, and that was a 75-69 win for Illinois. So there's a path. All these conference games at the end, we could get UConn St. John's. We could get a Big Ten matchup here. There's a path for some of these dogs potentially to get to the Final Four. If you got Illinois versus Iowa, would you lean towards Iowa at all?
I'd take Illinois for sure.
All right.
Cool opportunity for Iowa and Nebraska, though, because Iowa hadn't been to the I'm trying to remember. I think Iowa hadn't been to the Sweet 16 since the 90s, and Nebraska had never won a tournament game. So just cool opportunity. One of those teams is going to the Elite Eight.
Definitely. Arizona, Arkansas headed up to the West region here. Slightly disrespectful spread based on how good Arkansas is offensively. 8.5 points favor the Wildcats. Grant, do you like Arizona to move on? Arkansas, who's covering? Let me know.
Yeah, so the reason the spread is, it has nothing to do with offense. It's all defense. Yeah. And I'll be honest, people are going to use that high point game to say, how could Arkansas possibly beat Arizona if High Point gave them all they could have? High Point scored 83 points on Wisconsin and beat them. And Wisconsin did beat Michigan, and not to use the common opponent thing, but let's not talk about High Point like they're some nothing team. Coming into the tournament, they were one of the teams that I pinpointed as having a real chance of upsetting some teams. And it's because of the level of offensive efficiency that they play with. They don't turn the ball over. They force turnovers off of their opponents. So yes, Arkansas was challenged by a lesser team, but I think that lesser team could have done the same to a lot of teams that it would have run up against. So I'm not using that as a reason to discount them. I'm actually looking at Arkansas scoring 94 points and saying, hey, this is exactly what I thought their offense was. They're averaging 95 points per game in the tournament. So Arizona, while they are at some sports books the national championship favorite, while they cruised past Long Island in the battle of who has the real iced tea, while they did beat Utah State comfortably, 12 points in the end of it, I'm walking into this game like with essentially a blank slate. My evaluation on these teams has not changed since before we started this tournament.
The thing about Arkansas is they have the best player on the floor. Like that's the strength in this game. That's Darius Acuff. And what he did against High Point, 34 minutes, 36 points, 1 rebound, 6 assists. He was just that guy because the other dudes didn't have it as much. They're all efficient from the field, but Darius Acuff was the guy that just didn't flinch. Like it could have been good, could have been bad. He just kept a straight face and kept going, made some bad plays, but made a lot of good plays in that win. If they don't have him, obviously they do not get it done there. So I think the strength of having Darius Acuff on your team is the biggest advantage that any team has in this game. And 8.5 points, while it is a spread that Arizona is capable of covering, you just look at how much Arkansas has fought when they've been underdogs this season or when they've had these big spreads to overcome, and they find a way to keep games close because their offense. I mean, if you're going to score 90 points in a basketball game, you're probably going to cover 8.5. And that's kind of the offense. It's living and dying by scoring. And I think Arkansas has been pretty good at that this season. So I would definitely take them to cover this number.
Acuff has been out of this world recently, putting up NBA numbers. If we go back to March 4th, these are the final 4 games of the regular season, which includes 1 actual regular season game and then 3 games in the conference tournament. 28-13, then it's 37-5, then it's 24-7, then it's 30-11 in the SEC championship game. March Madness starts, he goes 24-7, and then it's 36-6. Like those are NBA All-Star, All NBA numbers that he is putting up in limited minutes against, in high stakes games against SEC competition, conference tournaments, March Madness. So this dude is playing out of his mind. Like you said, he is absolutely the biggest advantage for Arkansas. And I have no reason to believe that he's going to slow down. Like he's just better than everyone that's out there. So maybe the efficiency takes a hit a little bit, but you can pencil him in for 25 points and 6 assists, like at the minimum going into this game, I think. It's going to come down to the other guys, and this is where it gets interesting because neither one of Arizona or Arkansas is necessarily a very deep team. So it might not even be your bench players. It might just be the other starters. Trevon Brazile is going to always be my pick as the X-Man for Arkansas. But then you've got Billy Richmond and Malik Thomas. They've played really well. And then with Arizona, you've got one of the best and most balanced starting 5s in the country. So it's the others. Who of the others wins out? I think that's what decides who wins.
Yeah, and I think because of Darius Acuff, they cover. Win, who knows? But Darius Acuff is the reason they're not losing by more than 8 in this basketball game. Are we ready to move on to the Purdue versus...
No, because I got to say who's going to win.
I thought you gave your pick, Grant.
No, I didn't give my pick yet. I'm taking Arkansas.
Okay, big upset.
And win. They go into the Elite 8.
You wanted me to set you up there with the who's going to win, so I'm sorry I didn't do that. But you were saying it made me think you were leaning towards Arizona, honestly, with your spiel there.
Nope, I took Arkansas before the tournament began. Like I said, nothing about my opinion has changed, so I'm taking Arkansas.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with Arkansas too. Why not? I'll stick with Grant there.
Yeah.
But anyways, we got Texas versus Purdue here. Purdue's scary good. Like they are really, really good.
They turned it on at the right time.
Trey Kaufman-Renn, like when did he decide to become the best big in the country? Honestly, like I wouldn't want to go up against him. He looked really good against Michigan. Obviously, he's looked good in the tournament, but he's just consistent. Get the ball down low to him. He's been fantastic. Pretty much everybody else. Braden Smith, we know he's always good. Fletcher Lawyer's been really good from 3. He was 4 for 4 from 3 against Miami. Purdue is good. Like I think they're going to body Texas in this game. I don't think Texas stands a chance.
Yeah, when you shoot 57% from 3, which is what Purdue did against Miami, you're probably going to win that game. This is interesting because when we were on the show, I picked Texas to beat Gonzaga. So that result did not actually surprise me. But what Texas has done a very good job of, I mean, there are multiple things. Offensive rebounding's been solid for them. They've found ways to just, get efficient looks. But there's been guard pressure. We really saw that in the first round against BYU. They were putting so much pressure on some of these other players. I guess you can't say the first round because they played NC State, but in the round of 64. And with Purdue, my worry is that's not really going to matter if the guards can just take it and lob it over everyone's heads to the interior, and then you've got Trey Kaufman-Renn going to work, and the defense collapses, and you kick it out, and you've got these wide open three-point shooters who are knocking down all their shots. The way this game, the style of game sets up in Purdue's favor. And also, let's not forget, Texas was a first four team, and all the credit in the world to them, but they've already played 3 games. They weren't supposed to be in the spot. How long does this run actually go for? They were 21-14 this year. It's not like they're the most consistent team in the world. So I think this is the time where you go with Purdue.
And credit to Texas, but I mean, you look at what the run they've gone on to get here. You beat NC State, which was a really quality win, 68-66. Then you beat BYU. That's a big win, but BYU was really inconsistent. AJ DeBonto was the best player on that team. Other than that, nobody really did much for BYU. And then you look at the Gonzaga game. Gonzaga sucks. Like, I'll stand on that. They're terrible. So good job for Texas. They're beating the odds, but by no means should they beat a Purdue team that's just simply better than they are in every aspect of the game.
Agreed.
Another blowout incoming. Michigan versus Alabama. Yeah. Michigan's a 10.5-point favorite. Alabama looked really good against Texas Tech. That was the Super Bowl last night for them, I think, because you're not going to shoot as well as you. I mean, maybe Michigan's given up some threes this season, so maybe they'll shoot okay. But Michigan's physicality and the overall talent is going to be too much for the Tide here. Michigan rolls.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama can try to get out and run as much as they want to, but Michigan really doesn't mind doing that. They're a better team overall, just offensively, defensively, style of play is more efficient, more conducive to success in a tournament format. It's going to be a high-scoring game, I would assume. So maybe Bama covers the 10.5, but I don't think they're ever really going to have a chance of winning. I got Michigan.
Michigan's really turned it on in the tournament so far. Like they've looked the part. I mean, the Howard game early on wasn't great, but since the second half of the Howard game, what they did against St. Louis, and St. Louis, I mean, obviously solid team. The biggest difference that we see with the mid majors versus the major teams, the high majors, it's the size and the physicality. Everyone can make shots. Michigan just used it and abused it against St. Louis. Like Robbie Avila, tough way to go out. When he's your best big, though, how are you going to win basketball games against a major? You're not going to do it. He's not a big.
It's a lot like when you see good offensive lines against bad defensive lines in football games. Like by the fourth quarter, they just leaned on you too much, and you just don't have anything left. They're better conditioned, they're taller, they're stronger, they're faster, and that's what separates them when you get to the end of the games.
Definitely. Okay, so no upset there, and then we go to the final pick here, Midwest region, Tennessee versus Iowa State. This has the chance of being a decent game, I would think. Iowa State's favored by 4.5 points. Grant, do the Volunteers have any chance to advance here?
They got a chance, but I don't think that they're going to take it. I got Iowa State winning by double digits here. I mean, against Kentucky, they turned it on, and they said they were very clear in their press conference after the game. They said, we had a feeling, it was on our scouting report, that if we went on a run against Kentucky, they would just give up. And that's crazy that they saw that in the first place. And it's crazy that they actually went out and did it. They just snatched Kentucky's heart, and they win the second half 51-33. This was a 1-point game at halftime, and then they were up by 20 points pretty quickly into the second half. So they just flipped the switch. This is a team that they can dominate the inside. They can dominate the outside. They like to play with pace, but they can slow it down and stop you on defense. This is just a very, very well-rounded basketball team. Tennessee, I was so unimpressed with Nate Ament against UVA. And if he's going to be the reason that you're going to go out and cause an upset in this game, I don't think that's going to happen. So for that reason, I'm sticking with Iowa State. Rick Barnes' March Madness history, what I saw from them down the stretch against UVA. UVA threw away that game, but Tennessee also tried to throw it away. So just not impressed at all by Tennessee. I got Iowa State.
I will say Tennessee deserved to win the basketball game. I don't even know how Virginia climbed back to get a lead in the game. That with a couple minutes left, they had the 1 point lead, and then they threw the game away, and the possessions down the stretch were terrible. Tennessee was the better team, but Virginia's not very good.
No.
They're not good at all. So I do think that Tennessee has a chance here. I don't think it's that likely of a chance to win the game. And also, if you look at Kentucky, and again, styles make fights. So, you can't basically say that Kentucky beat Tennessee twice. And that's why, Iowa State's going to beat Tennessee because Iowa State beat Kentucky. That's what do they call it? Like in football season, when you're comparing all these teams, like
Caleb Tate?
No, like it's like the transitive power, right? Like they like all those jokes in like Twitter where it's like the mid-major beats this major team, so in turn that team's better than that team. Can't necessarily say that, but Kentucky did beat them twice this season, and then Iowa State just smoked Kentucky. So I will take Iowa State here. I think it's shaping up to be Iowa State, Michigan 1-2 in the region.